Okay, we're here live with third period. Say hi, third period. Okay, so we're going to go over what the questions that I think are most important. Actually, can someone get the lights for us, please? Thank you. So, here we go. We're live. Thank you for being quiet. So, let's look. I want to talk about number 1 first, mostly because we already talked about this briefly, but this particular problem does not have totals, and you need the totals. Also, I highly expect you're going to have questions regarding givens, and the first question of your SPG tomorrow is asking you questions about a two-way frequency table. Like it says that right on the blueprint. So don't forget, you're going to have to add going across and down. Here how it says, let A represent the small coffee. So I'm going to put an A over small. B represents a large coffee. C represents chocolate. So, and then we have to add all these numbers up to get a total. So I'm not going to add up all the columns. I'm just going to first add the numbers up. And I think I got 257. Did anyone else get 257?
Yes.
Okay. So we know that altogether there's 257 people. So the first one says probability of A line C. Now remember that this line is given. So what this is really saying is what's the probability a person got a small coffee given that they got chocolate. So the main thing is because this is after the line, that dot, that means that the only numbers we care about are the people who got chocolate. These are the only numbers we care about. Altogether, when you add it across, you should have had 75 people get chocolate. Right?
Yes,
okay, thank you. So then when we have 75 and it says, what's the probability that they had small? All we're going to do is do 20 out of 75. And the reason why that one's out of 75 and not the whole number is because of the word given. So then when we do 20 divided by 75 on the calculator, you get 0.267. This will round, so that way you'll have choice A. Now, in the second one, it only says, I care about the probability of B. It doesn't care about if they chose anything. They just want to know how many people got large coffees. So again, you're going to add up the totals, 45 plus 12 plus 56. I got 113. So then we're going to do 113 out of all the people, 257. So when we divide that out, we get 0.439, which would round to give us B. Then we have B given C. So again, because it says given C, I only care about the B's in that column. So there's 45 people who drank the chocolate flavor. So I'm going to do 45 divided by 75. Remember, if you see the given line, your denominator is going to be how many total people. The first question that says on the blueprint is this is what you're going to get. When we do 45 divided by 75, we get 0.6. Since 0.6 doesn't equal 0.4, we know it's not choice C. It says the probability of C happening. Well, we know there's 75 people. It doesn't say given, so that means I'm going to do the total people. So when I do 75 divided by 257, I get 0.291. So this one is correct. For C given A, well, because it says given A is going to be my denominator, so I do have to add all these numbers up. 20 plus 16 plus
84.
Thank you. So C, how many people of the 84 had chocolate? 20. So 20 divided by 84 is not going to give you anything close to 0.73. 23.8, or I'm sorry, 0.238, which doesn't equal here. So our answers are A, B, and D. Now tomorrow, and for the district assessment, my understanding it's all multiple choice questions. So it should just be like, you should find the one that works. But because in this problem, it says select all of them, that's how we had to look. I want to look at 3. They are notorious for trying to trick you. So I'm going to draw 3 a little bit, well, a lot bigger. Let's look here. This is what it has for 3. If you need help with 2, that is on YouTube already. So here, this is C. It tells us that we have these 2 sides and we have this side. Now, most of us, if we were proving this, we would immediately think BD is congruent to BD reflexive property. But this is what makes it tricky. You have to pay attention to the notes. It says it wants you to prove it, but you have to prove it doing side angle side. Because that angle is between the 2 sides, that means that I have to pick this angle here and this angle here have to be congruent. It's kind of, again, school lunches, we have the 2 sides together and the angle on the outside. Zaxby's is bread, chicken bread. We need the angle to touch the 2 sides. So if we look here, I'm going to work up from the back. Here it says ADB is a right angle. Well, if we knew this was a right angle, we could technically do hypotenuse leg, but hypotenuse leg is not side angle side. So it can't be choice D. BD bisects ABC. That would give you this angle here and this angle here, neither of which are between the 2 sides. They touch one side, but that would be angle side side, which we know is not a congruence. But more importantly, we're trying to get SAS. BD is congruent to BD. That is true, but that would make it congruent using side, side, side. And they only care about side angle side. So the answer is A, and it's A because if we look at just the big triangle here, we know that because these sides match up, the opposite angles are congruent. That's the definition of an isosceles triangle. Here, I want to remind you for number 5, when it says DEF, just draw any triangle. It doesn't have to matter how you do it, but the order of the letters matter. So if I make DEF look like this, my matching triangle says PQR. I have to make sure the P is in the same place as the D, the Q is in the same place as the E, and the R is in the same place as the F. So then it makes sense to just look, well, is F in the same place as R? Yes, so that's true. Is D in the same place as R? No. There exists one or more rigid motions. Well, because this is a congruence, that is going to be true because rigid motions are isometries. They're translations, rotations, reflections. So of course you could translate it. Dilations, that one will not always be true. The only time it would be true is if it was similar triangles, people in the back, or if they told you a dilation of 1, which doesn't, you would never really do a dilation of 1. Here it says only a reflection. Well, that's not true because it could be a translation. A rotation will never map. That's not true because rotations are isometries and preserve congruence. It says DEF can be mapped onto PQR using translation, reflection, and or rotation. That's true. So there you should have A, C, and G. As a reminder for number 6, all this is saying is when you have the perpendicular bisector, remember we did perpendicular bisectors like this and we drew the line. All that means, the answer is going to be A, is that the distance between here and here will always match up. That's all it's saying, that those pieces are the same. You should just have to know that one. Here, let's look at this one. Here it wants to know what's an observation we can make. The main important thing is they call this a diameter. Usually speaking, they're not going to give you a piece of information unless it's important. So that happens to be important. While we don't know, we can't speak anything about parallel sides. The only time we could have parallel segments is if we have congruent arcs. So for example, if we had 2 lines like this, and they told you this arc and this arc were the same, then you could say parallel lines. So that's why it's not this one. Again, because we can't prove parallel lines, we can't do a trapezoid because trapezoids have one set of parallel lines at least. Similarity, we can't really deal with. So the answer is D. And the reason why the answer is D is when we did arc to angle, we know that 180 degrees is a circle, is half of a circle. So to get angle Q is an inscribed angle to the diameter. So since this is 180, arc to angle we divide by 2. 180 divided by 2 gives you 90 degrees. And the same would be true going the other way for angle A. Because the endpoints are on the diameter, it's 180. This one, just a reminder, I'm not going to do the math. Because it says bisector, you have to make sure that you realize these are going to be equal. So all you do to solve this problem is 7x plus 10 equals 9x minus 2, and then you solve it algebraically. The main tip is bisector. Some people get used to like adding up everything to combine like terms because they see the x's. That's not what this is asking. This is saying bisector. Down here, don't forget isosceles. The opposite angles are the same. So all this right here where they said the two sides are 21, that doesn't really help you. The only reason why they gave you that is so that you know the base angles, which were the base angles. That's it. So all you would do here is just add them all up and set them equal to 180. Up here, this is called the exterior angle theorem. But if you don't remember that a triangle always has how many degrees? And a straight line always has how many degrees? So all you have to do is just figure it out. Add these two up, 72. 180 minus 72 means there's 108 left for this part. A straight line has 180. 180 minus 108 leaves you 72. That's it. Here, don't forget this theorem. The idea of mid-segments. Mid-segments create parallel lines and equal components. I used to teach you to look for the parallelogram. So if we go here, here's our parallelogram right here. So that means that this side and this side have to be parallel, or any piece of it. It doesn't have to be the whole piece. It could just be this side right here, and this side right here might be the only letters they give you. Let's look at 816 because it's bizarre. It says Jim asserted that some, but not all, parallelograms are kites. Remember, a kite has consecutive sides are congruent. Consecutive sides are congruent. That's what a kite is. So here, because it says parallelogram, we have to do process of elimination. We know that a rectangle is a parallelogram, but we know that it's not consecutive sides. So this is a no. Here, this is not a parallelogram at all. So this is a no. So because of this, that's not an example of what Jim said. If we look here, this is a parallelogram. Are consecutive sides the same measure? No. A square is a parallelogram. Are two sides in the row the same measure? Yes. So it's choice B. It's not choice C because this is not a parallelogram. And then so that we can't even look at that at all. And then here, neither one of these are kites. So in order for Jim to be right, you had to give an example of one that was a kite and one that wasn't a kite. Here, I really hope you get a question like this one. Remember, if they give you anything like this, you're just going to use the side splitter theorem. So all it's going to be is 5 over 12 equals x over 18, and then you cross multiply. That's it. This one I gave you because most kids would skip over it because they think it's so hard. This is your magic word, proportional. Anytime you see the word proportional, I shouldn't say anytime because there's probably going to prove me wrong once. 95% of the time when you see the word proportional, you're going to look for something that says similar. Anytime you see congruent for a side, it's going to probably be, well, I guess congruent. But anytime you get portional for sides, it's going to be similarity. All right, everyone wake up for this one because 19 and 20 looks hard, but it's manageable. I'm going to talk about 20 first, and then I'm going to go back to 19. All I'm going to do is take the two triangles. I'm a little disappointed with some people over there. I'm going to take these two triangles right here, and I'm just going to redraw them. So here I've got R is up here, U is my right angle, and then I have S. So they told us that RU equals 4. Then for this triangle right here, we've got S and T. Here's my right angle, and they tell me that UT equals 12. So basically, we end up having to find RS. So this question is more like what you might see on the district assessment. But the first thing you have to do is you have to find this matching side. So here, US over here is X, and US up here is X. So now we're just going to do similar triangles, sir. I did, because I wanted you to see how this was like, we used to do it baby. Here's the baby bear. Here's the mama bear side. Here's the papa bear side. And then here's my baby bear side. Here's my mama bear side. Here's the papa bear side. I just flipped it so you could see it like the small matches to the small, the medium to the medium, the large to the large. So here's the trick. Please write this down. If you see the word altitude, the reflexive side has to be used twice. And what I mean by that is you're going to set up a proportion. You're going to put the reflexive side down here and the reflexive side up here. One will always be low, one will always be high. The other two numbers, it doesn't matter where you put it. So here, we're trying to find this reflexive side X. So I'm going to put X in the bottom on one and X in the top on the other. It doesn't matter where I put the 4 or 12. I'm going to just change it up and put the 4 here and the 12 up here. It doesn't matter. I could put the 4 on top and the 12 on the bottom. As long as I have whatever the reflexive is on the diagonal, nothing else matters. So here I've got X times X is X squared. 12 times 4 is 48. Then when I take the square root, I get X equals the square root of 48. So here, this line US equals the square root of 48. The question, though, is asking for RS. This is what makes it a question you'll probably see on the district assessment and not the SPG. Now that we have RS, what's going to happen is, or sugar shoots, US, now we're going to use the Pythagorean theorem to find RS. So we will just do 4 squared plus the square root of 48 squared equals C squared. 16, remember the squared takes out the square root, so that's 48. We're left with 64, and then we take the square root to get 8. So that's a more complex problem you might see on the DA. Let's look at an easier problem up here. Draw the triangle. It says the word altitude, so I'm going to know to put the hypotenuse on the bottom. It just makes life easier. It tells you the altitude was CD, so that means that C has to be the right angle. It doesn't matter where I put the A or the B. So then I just label it. It tells me that CD is 10, AD is 4, and it wants DB. So again, anytime you see the word altitude, you know you're going to set up a proportion. Whatever this reflexive line is, that's going to go on the bottom of one on the top of the other. So the reflexive line here is 10, not X. So I'm going to put 110 on the bottom and 110 on the top. It doesn't matter where I put the other two pieces. Now I cross multiply. 4x equals 100. Divide by 4 to get x by itself. X equals 25. So this should be an easy problem. The main thing to remember is if you see the word altitude, you're setting up a proportion. One goes on the bottom, one goes on the top, and then you cross multiply. Look at number 21. Here, this is the same thing as saying, here's my A, alpha, here's my B, beta. And we know this. It says there's at least 2, if not 3 questions that relate to what's the relationship between cosine and sine. Remember that we talked about cosine A always will equal sine B. So you might just remember, well, if they told me cosine of alpha is 5 over 13, what sine of beta, you know it's got to be 5 over 13. If you don't remember that rule, just figure it out. Here's A. Cosine is adjacent over hypotenuse, so that means my 5 has to go here and my 13 has to go here. One of my students today did Pythagorean theorem and she figured out the other side. And then when she's like, okay, well, what's sine B? Sine is opposite over hypotenuse. The opposite is 5. The hypotenuse is 13. So you can do it the longer way. That's totally fine. Over here, As a reminder, here's for 25, we have a shape that is a square. It's not beautiful, but pretend. Okay. It says, what is the volume of the three-dimensional shape? This could be this you might see tomorrow as a harder one or an easier one on Monday. Or actually, you guys are taking yours on the Tuesday, the 21st. What would you get when you spin a square? What shape do you get? Nope. A cylinder. Thank you. So we know that a cylinder is pi r squared height. Because this is where the line is, it tells us that it's got 12 here. So what's my radius going to be? 6. What's my height going to be? 12. And then you just plug it in. Notice how none of these have pi in it, so you will put in 3.14, click pi. And you'll be using school calculators for this test. Yep. Okay, so let me stop the video.